My beloved child, wait for a moment. Do not rush past these words. There are moments that seem ordinary on the surface, yet beneath them entire worlds are shifting. There are conversations happening behind closed doors, thoughts being carried in silence, emotions hidden behind careful smiles. And tonight, a story is unfolding that may touch a place deep within your heart. Something is stirring, not in the way you expect, not with noise, not with dramatic signs, but quietly, almost invisibly, like the first light before dawn. You were guided here for a reason. Perhaps your heart has been carrying questions. Perhaps there are things you have felt but could never fully explain. Perhaps there is a connection that has remained wrapped in uncertainty, leaving you wondering what is truly happening beyond what your eyes can see. Listen carefully, because this story begins with a secret. Not a secret born from cruelty, not a secret created to harm, but a secret that grew from fear, protection, and the complicated emotions that people often hide when they do not know what to do with the truth. There is a woman in this story, someone close to the person your heart keeps thinking about, someone who has watched events unfold from a distance, someone who knows more than she has ever allowed herself to say. For a long time, she remained silent, not because she enjoyed hiding the truth, not because she wanted confusion to continue, but because she believed that speaking would change everything. And sometimes people fear change more than they fear silence. Can you feel the weight of that? How many people carry truths they never intended to keep? How many hearts have remained quiet simply because they feared what might happen once the words finally escaped? This woman carried something important. For weeks, for months, maybe even longer. Every time she considered speaking, doubt appeared. Every time she came close to revealing what she knew, another reason emerged to stay quiet. Yet something unexpected has begun happening. The silence that once felt comfortable no longer feels safe. The truth that once seemed easy to hide now presses against the walls she built around it. And those walls are beginning to crack. Stay with me, because what happens next changes the entire direction of this story. There was a moment recently, a small moment, one that almost nobody would have noticed. A conversation, a glance, a sentence spoken casually. Yet for her, it felt like a thunderstorm moving across a clear sky. In that instant, she realized something. She realized that secrets do not remain still. They grow, they expand, they create shadows where clarity should exist. And suddenly she began asking herself a question she had avoided for far too long. What if the truth deserves to be heard? That question followed her everywhere. It followed her into quiet mornings. It followed her into busy afternoons. It followed her into sleepless nights. And each day it became harder to ignore. Meanwhile, the person connected to your heart continued moving through life without realizing how close they were to discovering something important. Imagine that. Imagine standing only a few steps away from information that could change your understanding of everything. Imagine feeling that something is different but not knowing why. Imagine sensing a shift in the air while being unable to see where it originates. That is where this story begins. At the edge of revelation. At the edge of understanding. At the edge of a truth that can no longer remain hidden forever. Yet there is another layer. A deeper layer. Because the secret itself is not what makes this story extraordinary. What makes it extraordinary is the reason it was hidden in the first place. The reason reaches back further than anyone expected. Further than recent events. Further than simple misunderstandings. It touches emotions that were never fully expressed. Feelings that were never given a voice. Memories that were carefully placed away and forgotten. Or at least people believed they had been forgotten. But forgotten things have a strange way of returning, especially when the time arrives for healing. especially when the heart becomes ready to receive what it once could not understand. This woman knew that. Perhaps not consciously, perhaps not immediately, but somewhere deep inside, she understood. The truth was approaching its moment, and once that moment arrived, there would be no turning back. The fascinating thing about destiny is that it rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly. One conversation, one realization, one unexpected encounter, and suddenly the path ahead looks completely different. That is exactly what is happening now. A chain of events has already begun, invisible to most people, yet powerful enough to alter everything. The first piece moved into place, then another, and now the story is gathering momentum. Even the woman who kept the secret can feel it. She senses that circumstances are changing. She senses that silence is losing its grip. She senses that the truth is getting closer, closer than it has ever been. Have you ever experienced that feeling? The feeling that something significant is approaching? Not fear, not anxiety, just a quiet certainty, a knowing, as though life is preparing to reveal a page you have not yet read. That energy surrounds this story now. The energy of revelation, the energy of answers, the energy of hidden things stepping into the light. But there is something even more surprising. The secret itself is not entirely about the past. Many people assume hidden truths only explain what has already happened. This one is different. This secret carries information about what could happen next. It contains a missing piece that changes how certain events are understood, and the woman knows it. That knowledge is precisely why her silence has become so difficult to maintain. Because every day she remains quiet, she sees the consequences. Every day she notices details others overlook. Every day she recognizes connections that nobody else sees. And every day the pressure grows stronger, until eventually a moment arrives when speaking becomes easier than remaining silent. That moment is approaching, faster than anyone realizes. Yet before the truth emerges, there is one final obstacle. One final hesitation, one final fear standing between secrecy and revelation. The woman worries about what will happen once the words leave her lips. Will people understand? Will they believe her? Will everything change? Or will nothing change at all? Questions like these have kept countless secrets alive. Questions like these have delayed countless revelations. Yet there comes a point when questions lose their power, a point when truth becomes stronger than fear. And tonight, that point is drawing near, very near, so near that even the atmosphere of this story feels different, as though the next chapter is waiting just beyond a doorway, as though the next conversation has already begun somewhere in the distance. As though a truth that remained hidden for far too long is finally preparing to reveal itself. But what exactly does this woman know? Why has she carried this burden for so long? And what happened recently that made her realize she may not be able to keep it hidden any longer? The answer is far more emotional than anyone expects. And when that answer finally emerges, it will reveal not only the secret she carried, but the reason she believed protecting it was the right thing to do. That revelation changes everything, and it begins with a memory she has never shared with anyone. A memory that suddenly returned when she least expected it. A memory connected to your soulmate, a memory connected to you, and the moment she remembered it, everything changed. To be continued. The strange thing about memories is that they do not always return gently. Sometimes they arrive like a whisper. Other times they arrive like a door suddenly opening after years of being locked. And for the woman who had remained silent for so long, that memory did not come back as a simple thought. It came back as a feeling so powerful that she had to stop what she was doing. A feeling that made her realize she had been looking at the situation through the wrong lens all along. For years, she believed she was protecting everyone. Protecting your soulmate. Protecting herself. Protecting a fragile balance that she feared would shatter if the truth ever surfaced. But now something was changing. The story she had told herself no longer felt complete. The explanation she had relied on no longer felt convincing. And the certainty that once kept her silent was beginning to disappear. Listen carefully. Because this is where everything starts becoming deeper than anyone expected. The memory that returned was not dramatic. There were no flashing signs. No extraordinary event. Just a simple moment from the past. A conversation. A look. A few words spoken long ago. Words that seemed insignificant at the time. Yet now, viewed through a different perspective, they carried an entirely different meaning. She remembered the expression on your soulmate's face. Not the version everyone else saw. Not the smile they wore around others. Not the confident image they presented to the world. She remembered the unguarded expression. The one that appeared for only a brief second. The one most people missed. And in that expression she suddenly recognized something she had ignored. Something she had underestimated. Something that changed her understanding completely. It was sincerity. Real sincerity. Not temporary fascination. Not curiosity. Not a passing emotion. Something deeper. Something genuine. Something that remained present even when nobody was watching. The realization unsettled her. Because if she had been wrong about that, what else had she been wrong about? The question lingered. It followed her through the following days. And the more she reflected, the more pieces began connecting together. Have you ever experienced that moment when scattered fragments suddenly form a picture? When things that never seemed related suddenly make perfect sense. That is what happened to her. Details she once dismissed became important. Moments she considered ordinary suddenly appeared significant. Conversations she barely remembered revealed hidden meaning. And slowly, a new truth began emerging. A truth she had spent far too long avoiding. The truth was not about manipulation. It was not about deception. It was not about some dark intention hidden beneath the surface. No, the truth was much more human than that. The truth was that emotions are often far stronger than people admit. Sometimes people bury them. Sometimes they deny them. Sometimes they convince themselves those feelings no longer exist. But emotions have a remarkable way of surviving, even beneath years of silence. Even beneath layers of distraction. Even beneath carefully constructed walls. And this woman was beginning to realize she had witnessed evidence of that survival many times without understanding what she was seeing. That realization changed everything. Because once she accepted that possibility, she could no longer ignore the secret she carried. The secret itself began feeling heavier, more urgent. More impossible to contain. Yet she still hesitated, not because she doubted the truth, but because she feared the consequences. What if revealing it changed relationships forever? What if people became angry? What if old wounds reopened? What if her words created a storm she could not control? These fears felt real, very real. And yet another voice had started. Speaking inside her. A quieter voice. A wiser voice. A voice asking a simple question. What if the truth creates healing instead of chaos? That question stopped her. Because she had never seriously considered it before. For years she focused only on what might go wrong. She never stopped to imagine what might go right. She never stopped to imagine that honesty could become a bridge instead of a burden. She never stopped to imagine that the revelation she feared could actually bring clarity. And once that possibility entered her mind, it refused to leave. Days passed. The pressure increased. Meanwhile, your soulmate remained unaware of the internal battle unfolding nearby. Life continued moving. Conversations continued happening. Ordinary moments came and went. Yet beneath the surface, something significant was building. A change, a shift, an invisible movement toward a moment nobody could stop. It was almost as though life itself had begun arranging circumstances. Small coincidences appeared. Unexpected encounters occurred. Topics emerged naturally in conversations. Situations developed that repeatedly brought the secret back into focus. The woman noticed it, and it made her uneasy, because it felt as though she was being gently guided toward a decision she could no longer postpone. The feeling became impossible to ignore. Then one evening something happened. Something simple, yet unforgettable. She overheard a conversation. Not intentionally. Not because she was searching for information. It simply happened. A few words reached her ears. A few observations spoken casually by someone who had no idea how important those words would become. And those words struck her heart immediately, because they confirmed what she had recently begun suspecting. The truth had not faded. Time had not erased it. Distance had not weakened it. Instead, it had remained quietly present, waiting, patiently, almost invisibly, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The woman stood there in silence, listening, thinking, remembering, and for the first time, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt responsibility, a responsibility she could no longer avoid, because now she understood something important. Silence is not always protection. Sometimes silence becomes a barrier. Sometimes silence delays understanding. Sometimes silence prevents people from seeing what they need to see. That realization changed her completely. Not instantly, not dramatically, but steadily. Like dawn replacing darkness. Like light slowly entering a room. The more she reflected, the clearer everything became. And the clearer everything became, the more obvious one truth appeared. The secret was approaching its expiration date. The silence was ending, whether she was ready or not. Yet even now, she had not revealed everything. There remained one final piece, one final detail, one final truth hidden beneath all the others. And that final truth was the real reason she stayed silent. Not because she feared the reaction, not because she doubted the outcome, but because years ago, someone made a promise connected to your soulmate, a promise connected to circumstances nobody fully understood at the time, a promise she never intended to break. For years she honored it faithfully, even when it became difficult, even when questions arose, even when opportunities to speak appeared. She remained loyal to that promise. But now something extraordinary had happened. The very reason for the promise no longer existed. The circumstances had changed. The conditions had shifted. And suddenly the agreement that once justified her silence had lost its power. She realized it during a quiet moment alone. A realization so shocking that she literally stopped in place. Because the excuse she relied upon for years was gone. Gone. Completely gone. And once she understood that, she could no longer hide behind it. The truth stood before her. Clear. Unavoidable. Waiting. She knew a decision was coming. A real decision. Not someday. Not eventually. Soon. Very soon. Closer than she wanted to admit. Closer than anyone realized. Meanwhile, your soulmate had started noticing subtle changes around them. Not enough to understand what was happening. Not enough to identify the source. But enough to sense that something felt different. A strange feeling. A quiet anticipation. As though answers were moving toward them from somewhere beyond their view. And perhaps that feeling was not accidental. Perhaps hearts recognize approaching truth before minds do. Perhaps souls sense movement long before events become visible. Perhaps something within them already knew that a chapter was ending, and another chapter was about to begin. The woman felt it too. Every passing day strengthened that feeling. Every passing day brought her closer to speaking. Every passing day reduced the distance between secrecy and revelation, until finally, a moment arrived. A moment she never expected. A moment that forced everything forward. A question was asked. A simple question. One sentence. Nothing more. Yet the instant she heard it, her heart froze. Because the person asking had unknowingly touched the very center of the secret. Not the edges. Not the surface. The center. The exact place she had spent years protecting. And as she looked into their eyes, she realized she could no longer pretend. She could no longer redirect the conversation. She could no longer hide behind old promises. The time had come. The truth was standing at the door. And for the first time in years, she reached for the handle. But what happened the moment she finally decided to speak? And what she revealed about your soulmate that nobody expected will change the entire direction of this story, and that revelation is only beginning, to be continued. There are moments in life when time seems to slow down. A single breath feels longer. A single glance feels heavier. A single decision feels as though it carries the weight of years. This was one of those moments. The question had been asked. The silence that followed felt endless. And the woman standing there knew that everything depended on what she chose to do next. For years she had carefully protected the secret. For years she convinced herself that remaining quiet was the right path. For years she watched events unfold while carrying knowledge that nobody else possessed. But now the walls she had built around that knowledge were beginning to crumble. And once a wall starts falling, it rarely stops halfway. She looked away for a moment, not because she did not know the answer, but because she knew the answer too well. Sometimes the hardest truths are not difficult because they are painful. Sometimes they are difficult because they are powerful. Powerful enough to change perspectives. Powerful enough to rewrite old assumptions. Powerful enough to make people see familiar situations through entirely new eyes. And the truth she carried possessed exactly that kind of power. The person standing before her waited patiently. They had no idea what storm was unfolding inside her heart. No idea that a single question had awakened years of memories. No idea that a lifetime of silence was hanging by a thread. Yet something in their expression felt different. There was sincerity there, a genuine desire to understand, a genuine search for clarity, and perhaps that sincerity was what finally convinced her, because in that moment she realized something important. The truth was no longer about her. The secret was no longer hers to carry. The story belonged to everyone connected to it, especially your soulmate. Especially the people whose lives had been shaped by incomplete information. And so, for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself to imagine what might happen if the truth was finally spoken. The possibility felt terrifying, but strangely, it also felt freeing, like setting down a burden she had carried for far too long, like opening a window in a room that had remained closed for years. Like allowing fresh air to enter a space that desperately needed it. Stay with this story, because the next part is where everything begins to shift. The woman did not reveal everything immediately. That is not how life works. That is not how deep truths emerge. Instead, she began carefully, one memory at a time, one detail at a time, one piece at a time. And as she spoke, something unexpected happened. The listener became very quiet, not because they were shocked, not because they were confused, but because the pieces were fitting together with surprising ease. as though somewhere deep inside they had already suspected parts of the truth, as though the answers they were hearing explained questions they never knew how to ask. The conversation continued, minute after minute, memory after memory, and gradually a picture began forming, a picture far different from the one people had believed, a picture that revealed hidden emotions, hidden sacrifices, hidden intentions, things that had never been fully understood. The woman described moments from the past, moments most people forgot, moments your soulmate probably assumed nobody noticed. Yet she had noticed. She remembered everything. The subtle expressions, the quiet reactions, the changes in behavior, the small signs that often reveal more than words ever can. And suddenly a pattern appeared, a pattern impossible to ignore, a pattern that pointed toward one undeniable truth. Your soulmate had been carrying something much deeper than anyone realized, much longer than anyone realized. The realization stunned even her, because now that she was speaking openly, she could see the entire picture more clearly than ever before. It was almost unbelievable. How could something so significant remain hidden for so long? How could so many clues exist without anyone connecting them? The answer was simple. People see what they expect to see. They hear what they expect to hear. And when something does not fit their assumptions, they often overlook it completely. That is exactly what happened here. The signs were present. The evidence existed. The truth was always nearby. Yet almost nobody recognized it. Until now. Until this conversation. Until the moment the silence finally began breaking apart. But the most surprising revelation had not even arrived yet. Not even close. Because buried beneath every memory was another layer. A deeper layer. A layer connected to a choice. A choice made years ago. A choice that altered everything afterward. The woman remembered the day clearly. More clearly than she wanted to. She remembered where she was. She remembered the atmosphere. She remembered the emotions filling the room. And most importantly, she remembered the decision. At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. At the time, everyone believed it would protect people from pain. At the time, nobody imagined the long-term consequences. But now, looking back, she understood something painful. The choice that was supposed to simplify everything had actually complicated everything. The choice that was supposed to create peace had unintentionally created confusion. The choice that was supposed to close a chapter had quietly left the chapter unfinished. That realization struck her harder than anything else. Because suddenly she understood why the secret refused to stay buried. Unfinished stories have a way of returning. Unspoken truths have a way of resurfacing. Unanswered questions have a way of demanding answers. And that is exactly what was happening. Not because of coincidence. Not because of luck. But because certain truths eventually find their way into the light. No matter how long they remain hidden. Meanwhile, something unusual was happening in your soulmate's world. They could feel it. Even without knowing the details. Even without hearing the conversation. There was a restlessness growing inside them. A feeling that something important was approaching. A feeling that a missing piece was moving closer. A feeling that the future was preparing to reveal something the past had concealed. The sensation appeared unexpectedly. During ordinary moments. During quiet moments. During moments when they least expected it. And each time it appeared, it grew stronger. Have you ever felt that? That strange certainty that life is preparing a surprise you cannot yet see? That quiet feeling that events are aligning beyond your awareness? That subtle knowing that answers are closer than they appear? That is the energy surrounding this story now. Everything is moving. Everything is shifting. Everything is preparing for a revelation. Yet the woman still carried one final truth. one final truth she had not shared, one final truth that explained everything, the real secret, the heart of the secret, the reason all of this mattered. And strangely enough, it was not information, it was not an event, it was not a conversation, it was a realization about your soulmate, a realization so profound that once she understood it, she could never see them the same way again. For years she misunderstood their actions, for years she misunderstood their silence, for years she misunderstood their choices. Now she finally understood why those choices were made. And the understanding changed everything. Because what looked like distance was not distance. What looked like indifference was not indifference. What looked like moving on was not moving on. The truth was far more complicated, far more emotional, far more human. And when she finally connected all the pieces, tears filled her eyes. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of regret, tears of understanding, because she realized how much had remained unseen, how much had remained misunderstood, how much had remained hidden beneath the surface. At that moment she made a decision, a real decision, a final decision. No more silence, no more hiding, no more carrying the burden alone. The truth deserved to be heard. The story deserved to be completed, and the people connected to it deserved clarity. But just as she prepared to reveal the final piece, something unexpected happened. A message arrived, a message she never anticipated, a message connected directly to your soulmate. The timing was impossible to ignore, almost unbelievable, as though life itself had chosen that exact moment to intervene. She stared at the message, read it once, then again, and with every reading, her heart beat faster, because the message confirmed something she never expected, something that transformed the secret into something much bigger than anyone imagined, something that connected the past and the future in a way nobody could have predicted. And when she finally understood what that message meant, she realized the truth she was about to reveal was only the beginning. The real story had not started yet, and what comes next will force everyone to see this situation in an entirely different light. To be continued.